Hey, hopefully you can hear me. Decided I'm gonna cut this piece out of here. Water is getting through here somewhere. I've had a couple people comment on my last video while I was taking the teak off, saying what I should have done is just drill holes in the bulwark and then use closed cell foam in a spray can and just inject it pretty much into the bulwark itself, and then it's going to expand and kind of fill the cavity. And that was my original plan, was to just do that. But after further inspection and cutting that plate, or that little viewport, found all of that rotted wood that you guys seen earlier. And what I came to realize in that is my description of the halted deck joint was not entirely right. Last video showing that there was like a overlap, like a lap joint, and I was expecting two pieces of glass to kind of be glued and screwed together. But what I found was on the hull side, they'd actually glassed something similar to a stringer into the top part of the hull. So there was a piece of wood glassed in, probably about an inch or two thick, into the top part of the hull and then tabbed around. And that was what was used to screw down the deck to the hull. And what I found out in the process of doing all this is that almost 95% of that wood along my whole hull to deck joint was completely rotted out. This sucks. Water had leaked into all of those screw holes, and there was barely anything that was actually being held down mechanically. So essentially, my hull to deck joint was completely compromised. And on top of that, the genoa track. The genoa track screwed into that piece of wood also. It also had a couple bolts. I think it was like one bolt, 3 screws, 1 bolt. But the bolts had to be accessed through the viewpoint and actually just drilled through that stringer I was talking about. And because the wood was so rotten, there was all that moisture, and moisture built up around fiberglass and resin can over time break down the resin itself. And actually, a few of those points were starting to break down too. So the only real thing holding my genoa track on was maybe a 1/4 inch of fiberglass. That was also not very strong. So essentially, I'm very grateful that I've gone this extra mile, cut the whole entire bulwark apart. It's been a lot of work. I've spent hours grinding, more hours sanding, prepping, digging out all of this wood, and it's been a lot of work already, and there's still a lot more to go. I just wanted to mention that because filling that void wouldn't have solved most of the problems. It would have just kind of like ignored them. So I'm glad I did it this way. Tomorrow there's a chance that I'll actually start on glassing. I don't know if it'll get to that point, but there's a possibility. So right now I'm gonna do some major cleaning, get all of the surfaces cleaned up, everything vacuumed up, the whole bulwark cleaned out. There are little odd jobs I have to do, like build these like oval shaped things that are going to be necessary for my hawsepipes, but besides that, oh crap, I need to do that before I glass. So yeah, that's what we'll probably be doing tomorrow. All right, so today I have finally finished, I think, grinding and sanding the edge of the bulwark. Now, what I'm gonna have to do is rebuild the hawsepipe slots. And what that's gonna entail is, from what I'm thinking, I'm gonna try to build a mold. Something that's about the exact, like, circumference, I guess, of the hawsepipe. What I'm gonna wanna do is build a piece that's gonna slide through the top side of the bulwark and go in the spot where the hawsepipe is. There's not a very big tolerance in between like the bolts and the bronze here itself. So if any water does happen to leak past, instead of leaking into the bulwark, it's just gonna sit inside this case that I make. Now this is my idea. We'll see if it actually works out. And I'm not really sure how I'm gonna build a mold yet. I was thinking of finding, oh, there's some foam over by the garbage right now. Somebody bought some Lifetime batteries and threw some foam down. So I should run over there before it gets cleaned up. Okay, I'm back with my garbage and I think these will work. They're all wet because it rained out last night, so I'm gonna have to absorb the water off of them and then cut them to the shape I need. All right, it's pretty dark, but we'll make it work. So this piece actually happens to be the right thickness. I don't know how well you can see this. What I'm gonna do is just trace this guy on the outside and cut out a piece that's pretty much the exact same shape as this. So now what I'm going to do with this piece is, I'm going to take a piece of plastic and just lay it around the outer edge of this and then tape it on, and then I'll be able to just lay glass around this, and that should work quite well actually. Sweet. All right. It'd be better to use some sort of plastic tape rather than painter's tape here. But I'm just actually going to use a little bit. That way when I lay up my piece onto here, it's not going to absorb into the foam and be a pain to take off. All right, I guess now we wait and see how this one turns out. Of course, afterwards we're going to be grinding these edges off, but it looks good enough. Okay, so as we wait for that to harden, I actually just got off the phone with my dad. We had a good chat and was talking to him about the project I was doing, and my original plan was just to lay some, what's it called, masking tape over these holes when I fill this cavity with foam. But as that expands, it could actually push past the masking tape. So what I'm thinking, and it came to me while my dad was asking a bunch of really good questions, what I'm thinking is I'm gonna lay some pieces of glass on the inside of this. As I wait for that other piece to dry, I'm gonna just clean up the surface, get rid of any of the dust that's in there, wipe it down with some acetone, and soak some pieces of glass and just lay them up on the inside. That way it's sealed. Then once this cavity's full, I can fill this with something else and just fare over it. And those will all be nicely filled and strong. So I kind of rushed this part of the job, and mostly because it's not that big of a deal. It's going to be good enough that I can fare and fill from the outside now and make sure no water's going to get through there at all. I've been doing a lot of talking here for kind of a small job, but something I noticed about doing the starboard side there is this woven roving. I don't know how to describe this perfectly right now, but obviously you see that it's 2 strands at 90 degrees. It falls apart really easily. So when you're cutting it into these like smaller sections, the roving inside is able to separate, which makes it so that it creates a bunch of gaps and holes in where I glassed. So the other day I bought triaxle. I've never used triaxle mat or triaxle cloth before, so I decided to cut a small section out, and it cuts a lot smoother and creates a lot more of a compact cloth. And I'm going to use the triaxle to seal up the port side. So the reason it's called triaxle cloth is because the fibers are woven in 3 distinct directions. There's 2 45 degrees and 1 at 0 degrees running across it. So unsurprisingly, the triaxle worked much better. All right, this guy's hard enough now that it's still very slightly tacky, but it's pretty much solid. So I'm gonna see if I can take the foam and plastic out of it. It's still not fully dry, so it'll probably wait until tomorrow and it'll be fully cured and a little stiffer, and I'll be able to cut all this excess out and make it fit perfectly. Now I can start on other ones, and because the triaxle worked so good over there, I'll probably just use triaxle here too. If you're still unsure what I'm going to do with this, it's going to become clear later on in the video. So I just ran to the store. I went and bought some 2-part foam. So I'm going to do a really small test on this to see what happens. I've actually never worked with 2-part foam like this before. I've only ever used the spray can stuff. So I'm excited. I know how it works, but I'm excited for some reason to see how much expands. So I've got 2 little syringes. I'm only going to use a small amount, maybe like, I don't know, maybe 10 mils out of this whole thing, or half. I don't know. How much do you think would fill this whole cup? Let's hope it's not too bad, but yeah, let's see what happens. All right, that's part A. There's part B. Let's start with 5 mils. So we're at 10 right now. Screw it, let's use all of it and see what happens. All right, 10 mils. Maybe that's enough. I was quite surprised at how fast it started reacting after I mixed it, and how quickly it started expanding. This whole video sped up, but it only took about a minute or two, maybe 3, for the foam to fully expand. All right, it's been about a half an hour. I managed to get the foam out of the cup quite easily, actually, and it's quite strong. It's not super dense, like I can obviously squeeze into it and rip it apart. Now we can test to see if it's closed cell, I guess. I don't know how to tell. Can you tell just by the way it looks, or am I gonna have to see if it absorbs water? I don't know what I'm talking about. Somebody I'm sure can tell me. But this will be good. Good morning, everybody. So last night, right before I went to sleep, we laid up this piece with the triaxle. So we've got 3 of these made up. I need to make 1 more. Oh, and I also did a test piece on this foam, and it's completely adhered to the foam itself. So what that tells me is if I ever actually need to make like a foam... Oh, these guys started playing a bunch of music. Yeah, if I ever need to make a foam mold, I can build it with this liquid foam. I'm gonna build little bulkheads for the bulwark. That way when I'm actually pouring the foam, I can have something to kind of press on top of here, and it will allow the foam to fill that individual space. It'll also add some rigidity to the bulwark itself and segregate sections off, so if there is the off chance that water's able to leak into one spot, it's not going to pool and pour into every single area and rot out more foam. So I'm going to figure out how many of these bulkheads I need to build and then start laying up some glass. There's no power today, so they just turned the generator on. So it's gonna be a noisy day working in the boatyard. Like I said, it's very noisy out, but I'm gonna have to cut this down so that it can fit inside that slot. And then I'll run some thickened epoxy around it to hold it in place. So I'm mixing up some thickened epoxy right now, and it's not thickened yet, but I'm going to add thickener after. And we're going to run a little bit of a fillet, I guess you can call them, around those hawsepipe mold oval things that I made. I'm so good at descriptive words. A little bit more. All right. Next one. Those aren't fully cured yet, but they're getting there. They should be good enough once they're solid. Now let's go take a look at the my mini bulkhead pieces that I laid up this morning. They sound like they're pretty much solid, so let's try to peel it out. There's a little bit of masking tape that got stuck in it, but that's fine. It's not completely dry yet. It's almost completely dry. The whole thing is about 9 inches wide by 20 long, and the bulwark is about 2 inches wide by 6 inches deep. So I should be able to make about 12 pieces out of each of these. Well, I was just about to start grinding and cutting this to shape to put it into the last hawsepipe, and then hopefully get some thickened epoxy on it before I turn in for the night. But the power went back out. They've had a generator on all day. It's been the background noise you guys have probably heard. And the electrical grid in Guatemala is not very stable. So every once in a while we have power outages. Yeah, I'm happy how things turned out. A lot of those bulkheads are all in place. Tomorrow I'll be able to finish putting this in, as long as the power's back, and start glassing in all of those mini bulkhead type support things. And then I can fill the whole area with foam. After that, we'll be able to start laying glass. And once that's cured, we can sand. Once that's cured, we can paint. and the project will be pretty much done. Anyways, that's all I'm going to be getting up to today, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. So yesterday I left you guys with the little bulkheads that I was building. I've got to clean up and grind and acetone the areas where these little bulkheads are going to go into place. And then I have to put this guy here. So yesterday the power went out right as I was about to do that, so I never got around to it. But obviously the power's going this morning, so we can get to work right now. And that only took 23 minutes based on the GoPro. At some point here, I'm going to have to almost do a fillet on the inside of those small bulkheads that I put in the bulwark, but my hands aren't going to reach down into there. So I've got a bit of an idea. Not really sure if it's going to work, but I took a little piece of plastic and I'm gonna tape it onto this toothpick or the skewer, and then when I run this up, it might be able to create a nice fillet. All right, I got my two filleters. Now when the bulkhead is up, hopefully I'll be able to like kind of put a bit of epoxy in the tops of these like spoons, and then kind of push and fillet. Hopefully these work. I think they're going to. Let's get to it. I've got 20 of these little guys all together, running down the entire bulwark. What I'm gonna do, pull them out, sand them, scuff them up, clean and sand inside the bulwark as best I can. And we're gonna run through this quickly on YouTube world, probably not so quickly in reality. Actually, let's see how these guys work. All right, that actually worked really well. 19 more to go. All right, that's the end of today. I've been saying this for like 4 days now, maybe even longer, but tomorrow we're going to be putting in the expanding foam. If it wasn't for those little bulkhead things I decided to make, I probably would have been doing that 2 days ago, but I'm really happy that I actually did these. They're going to add more strength, actually, to the bulwark and the hull to deck joint, since it's actually attaching between the hull to deck joint. And it's also going to section off different areas in case there is a leak or something one day. Instead of rotting out all of the foam or damaging things, the water's just going to stay in one area, as long as I got epoxy into all those spots properly. But that is the end of today, but I'll see you guys next episode. Searching